And just a quick message to everyone out there. Obviously, as we know, COVID continues to impact our lives and livelihoods. We are ready and waiting to assist you in whatever way we can. We've been using remote technology to connect you to your witness for legal proceeding. We've been handling remote depots for quite a while, domestically and all around the world through remote technology. You can take depositions efficiently, securely, and most importantly, safely. Our reporters are ready to take down the record, and we're going to give you the same service that you all are used to getting from us. So feel free to reach out to me if you need anything whatsoever, and we'll make it happen for you.
Thank you, Matt. And Planet Depots has been such a great supporter of ours for so long. Gosh, we go back with Lisa like a couple of decades now at this point, and they're our diamond sponsors, and we truly appreciate you. So thanks for hopping on and saying hi to us.
No worries. Happy to be here.
And I put Matt Workman's information in the chat box. So if you need to reach out to him, you can find him there, or just throw me a line. Okay, bye, Matt.
Thank you.
Take care. Matt. Okay, friends. So joining us today is Brady Held. He is with Courtroom Animation, one of our fabulous gold sponsors, which we truly appreciate. And we're so glad to have Brady on today. He is going to tell us about getting the most out of your 3D animation. And with that, I'm just going to turn it over to you, Brady. I'm going to pin your video, so you now can go ahead and share your screen.
Excellent. All right, cool. Thanks so much, Mary. Really appreciate being here. I'm out in California, based out of Los Angeles. We're sorry for sending so much smoke your way. We'll do our best to avoid that in the future. Maybe. Anyways, it's great to be here. I'm excited to do this talk. I talk about this a lot with a lot of our clients. Really getting the most out of what I call your investment in 3D animations. And I call 3D animations an investment because really, a lot of times people think of them as, higher priced exhibits. I'm going to dispel a little bit of that, hopefully, during this presentation. But they are an investment. You're paying to produce an exhibit that's hopefully going to either increase, the amount that you're getting from your case, or will help you win your case, which is probably the best investment you can have in an exhibit. Cool. So let's jump right in. Let's see here. All right, so a couple of promises that I have, for you, what you're going to leave this presentation with is you're going to really understand the fundamentals of 3D animation. We're going to touch on this, but I think it's important to really understand, how 3D animations are actually made. It's kind of like if you're buying a medical illustration, but don't know what, a pencil or a paintbrush is. You have to have some sort of idea of the inputs into how an exhibit is made in order to properly, one, make sure that you're getting a good exhibit, two, make sure that it's admissible, and the foundation is solid and it's not going to crumble the moment the other side takes a look at it. And also understanding the fundamentals of 3D animation will help you, when the other side has an animation, you might be able to understand kind of how that's made, and if they're doing it properly, or if there's anything that can kind of be attacked, and maybe if you can limit the other side's 3D animation, that's as valuable as kind of having one for yourself, right? Cool. You're also going to really understand kind of what makes an animation effective, and what makes an animation look good. Sometimes those things are intertwined, and we're going to talk about when they are kind of a little bit separated, when something can be effective but not necessarily look good or look real. We're going to talk a lot about visualizing data, which is really what 3D animations are. They're data visualizations. And I have kind of a little footnote during that bullet point right there, because we're going to talk a bit about surveillance footage and cameras. There's so many cases now that are caught on some sort of video, whether it's a cell phone camera or a police body camera or a street camera, a liquor store camera. So many parts of cases are caught on camera. We're going to talk about kind of how to utilize that, how it can marry really well with 3D animation. And we're going to focus more on getting your animations admitted, last thing you want to do is pay for an animation and not have it, get into the courtroom. That's, kind of one of the worst things that can happen, especially when you're investing the money in it. Lastly, we're going to talk about kind of the limitations of 3D animation. So, what can't be animated, and knowing the limits before you kind of go in and get invested in an animation. Oh, one more point here, kind of reiterating some of the previous things. We're going to understand cost, maximize your return on investment, and kind of what to look for in a vendor. My company is obviously an animation vendor, and I would hope that you would choose us, but there's a lot of other good ones out there. And, I want to give you some bullet points of what to kind of look for and understand when you're choosing a vendor. Cool. So a little bit about me first, before we jump into kind of more of the presentation. Again, Brady Held. I've been the CEO of Courtroom Animation since 2013. That's when I founded the company out here in Los Angeles. My background's actually in video games. So I went to art school and worked for Electronic Arts, Activision, some of these other really big video game companies right out of college, really doing animation, background design, and kind of what they call conceptual storytelling. So using computer graphics to tell stories, which is really what video games are. And then kind of immediately following that, I got into forensic accident reconstruction. So when I went off to art school, a good friend of mine went off to USC School of Engineering and became a forensic accident reconstructionist, and kind of called me one day, asked me if I can animate a complex car accident. And that's kind of how it all got started about a dozen years or so ago. I've personally worked on over 600 cases. I think my company's, Tony could probably answer better than me, over 1,000 at this point. I've worked on over 150 trial exhibits. So if those numbers aren't adding up right there, we'll talk about this more a little bit later too. So much of our work is for mediation. But 150 trial exhibits I've personally worked on. There's a little bit of a breakdown of kind of what sectors we work in. It used to be we did a lot of civil defense work. That's changed a lot, and we've been pushing a lot more into civil plaintiff, doing a lot of that work. We also work for prosecution, especially out here in California. We have a really good relationship with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, and we do some crim defense, all around the country. And below that, a little bit of a breakdown of the types of cases we do. Obviously, a lot of accident reconstruction type cases, car crashes, and then a lot of medical. So whether it's medical malpractice or depicting injuries, medical illustrations, recreating surgeries, things like that. General liability or other types of cases, so people falling, things exploding, just general kind of lawsuits, and a little bit of product work, so product failure, as well as we kind of lump patent infringement cases into that. And then the biggest growing part of our business is actually officer involved cases, criminal cases and shooting cases. And I think with what's kind of going on in the world right now, you can understand why that's kind of the largest growing side of our business. It's unfortunate, but we actually can make a really big difference on that side of the law. And then we do a little bit of environmental stuff as well. Our trial exhibits have been admitted into court 99% of the time. So there's a handful, and I can literally tell you all the cases individually of the ones that didn't get in. We'll go into kind of why a little bit later when we start talking a little bit more about admittance. There's good reasons. There's good reasons why a couple exhibits haven't gotten admitted, and there's some bad reasons, at least in my opinion, and I'll talk about that as well. I've testified in state court in California, Illinois, and Florida, and I've written federal reports for cases in California and Texas, personally. Cool. All right, so let's jump right in. There's going to be a lot of videos that I'm going to be showing during this presentation. Tony Auzick, who's our rep for the Eastern United States, is also on this Zoom. He's going to be taking notes. If there's any videos that don't play well for you, he's going to kind of capture when in the recording those videos are going to be. And yeah, I think Mary's going to send out this recording, and we'll send out links to the individual videos if anybody wants them, so you can see the videos in high fidelity. Unfortunately, the nature.
Brady, I just wanted to interrupt for a second just to affirm that. Absolutely. I'll send anything out because I do notice that Zoom sometimes doesn't pick up sound, sometimes with video. So if there's anything anybody needs, I am happy to do that. And now I'll be quiet again.
Cool. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, yeah, it's just kind of the nature of Zoom. Sometimes videos stutter. I don't think I'm going to be playing anything with sound. because that can get really kind of wonky with Zoom. But you know, sometimes the video stutter. Just know that everything I show you that I've created is really nice and great looking. Cool. All right, so I'm going to go in and show some different examples of different types of cases, and then really with, you know, I want you to look through the lens of these are data visualizations, not animations, right? Okay, so this is your standard kind of accident reconstruction animation that we produce. So as a data visualization, the data that we're visualizing for this is very simple. It's a police report that states the location, the speeds the vehicles are traveling, where the initial impact is, and where the vehicles end up. The second piece of data is photographs of what the vehicles look like at the end of this collision. And the third piece is really what we call a laser scan. So a high definition laser scan is a tool that we go out to the environment where this took place, and the scanner kind of spins around and collects hundreds of millions of data points. And from that, you know, we can create a very realistic model of the environment. So we know that, you know, when we create this animation, it's very sound and it's fitting the real world scale and measurements and all that. So this is your typical kind of liability animation. And for all of these animations, I'm going to do my best. I do this presentation a lot. I'm going to do my best to remember to tell you what all of these animations cost. You know, people always are kind of, you know, wondering about cost of these animations. So I'll be real frank about it. This set of animations, I think there's 4 or 5 of them, was produced for mediation. And I think this was cost around $15,000 to create these, you know, 4 or 5 very highly realistic views. And, you know, I think they got policy limits of, you know, $1 million or so on this case. So a pretty good ROI when you're talking about cost. So that's a liability animation. Now let's go forward. This is kind of a mix between a liability and a mechanism of injury animation. So this guy's eating dinner in New York. Someone opens a cellar door behind him while he's eating, and he steps through and he leaves. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's actually pretty horrendous. But, you know, we go in, we show the actual mechanism of injury, how he tears his MCL as he's falling. And then once he falls and kind of jars his neck on this amount of debris that's below him that might have actually saved his life, but still, you know, he ends up herniating a few discs in his cervical spine. So mechanism of injury animation is kind of, you know, it's kind of the world right between liability and damages. And they're really effective videos. And as a data visualization technique, you know, we're visualizing MRI data. We're using some other radiology to show, you know, the displacement in the neck. We're using the treating physician or the, you know, sometimes the life care planners data. They can talk about what this person might need in the future if we're going to do some further stuff with damages. But again, this is purely data visualization. We do some, you know, when we show the actual environment a little bit earlier, you know, this is also laser scanned. It doesn't necessarily need to be laser scanned because this is a very demonstrative animation, and we could recreate this just from, you know, probably Google Street View or some other photographs, but we happen to laser scan this. This animation, I believe, was right around $10,000, maybe a hair under $10,000 to produce this. And as you saw in the text, it was, I think, a $700,000 settlement our client got. This is a pure damages animation. So this is, as data visualization goes, we're visualizing all of the injuries that this client sustained. And there's quite a few. So everything, I should have put a little warning before this. There's going to be a little bit of gruesome imagery throughout this presentation. I know you're attorneys and you deal with people getting hurt. Sorry for eating lunch. I should have kind of done that before. There's going to be some injuries that we're going to show. This is probably going to be the worst of them. So if you're good so far, you're probably pretty good, but don't quote me on that. So again, data visualization, you know, we're showing the X-ray and how our depiction of the broken femur just lines up with that. It's a visualization that, sorry, I'm kind of went back a little bit here. It's a visualization that extrapolates on that radiology and shows it in a more clean manner. I'll skip forward a little bit. You know, as you can imagine, we're going to go through this guy's body. We're going to show more and more injuries, collapsed lung. Again, I think the data is a report from the treating physician, maybe some other radiology that we're really just kind of showing in a way that's easier to digest and understand. This eye injury was created from a report of another one of the doctors that worked on this individual. And then we go in through some skull fractures, and we go in and show some TBI, some axonal shearing in his brain that was dictated by the neuroradiologist, I believe, or maybe another expert that had written a report that talked about that part of the injury. So this is a very big case. A lot of injuries, and a lot of damages. And I think this animation, which is quite long, I really kind of sped through it a little bit here, was I think closer to $30,000. Cool. And then kind of extrapolating on damages a little bit. So let me turn the sound off there. And this might be a little gruesome as well. Last one, I promise, I think. Going in, showing surgeries, showing what your client had to go through after they were damaged, and kind of, maybe some hardware that's going to be left inside them for the rest of their life. This was I think it was a $5 million settlement on this case. I actually sat in the mediation when the defense counsel watched these videos and got to see the look on their faces as they were kind of watching all these things that the plaintiff had to endure. And these are powerful, really powerful things. But again, data visualization. These are literally all created from operative reports. We take operative reports, we create animations from them, and then we work with either the surgeon, the treating surgeon, or another medical expert to authenticate, hey, this is in fact what it looks like, this is accurate. A couple other examples, a little more rare, but I just wanted to throw them in here. This is a case we worked on in the oil rig, just to show that we're able to really kind of create these more robust structures, complicated objects, just to, this is all created from blueprints. So if you have a case, maybe with an apartment complex or something that has blueprints, we're able to visualize those blueprints in very good ways. And this is really more of a kind of storytelling of showing how this electricity kind of came to the mainland, more of a simplified version of that version of the oil rig. And we're going to kind of go and show how this electrocution actually happened. Stepping through a little bit more, we also do a lot of data visualization for products. So either for product kind of liability cases where a product breaks or explodes, in the case of an e-cigarette, or patent infringement cases, we kind of lump those two together. So we can really show a detailed view of how something works, how it's put together. This is created just from photographs and the patent schematics of how this thing is built. So really, again, taking a piece of data, visualizing it in a way that anybody can understand how something works. And lastly here, this is a police-involved case. And this is a data visualization of testimony. So there's a few depositions that we used to put together how this police-involved shooting actually happened. And, we have good timing based on a few different witness accounts of what happened. And we're able to create a very powerful demonstrative exhibit of how this event took place. Cool. All right. So, it was important to me and it's always important to me for clients to really understand that what we're doing, we're not creating cartoons. I know animations sometimes get this kind of label of cartoons or fabricated in some way, but they're really just visualizing data. If they're not visualizing data, if they are fabricated, they're going to get torn apart in trial. So that's important to understand. Cool. I'm going to go through the fundamentals of 3D animation, really how these things are built. I'm going to kind of zip through it pretty quickly, I think. But I want you all to understand, how these things are actually made, at least at a really baseline level. So there's a few key kind of concepts here. So we have 3D models, textures, lighting, animation, cameras, rendering, and then kind of input data. So if I just label those things, I could have you go research them, and none of you will, and that's fine. So I'm going to show you what all these things mean. So first, I'm going to open up my 3D software here. So this is one of the main animation softwares we use called 3ds Max. 3ds Max and Maya are kind of two of the ones that most animators use. There's other ones as well, but not important. So what is a 3D model? I'm going to show you in kind of its most basic terms. So I just created a sphere here, right? So this is a 3D sphere that I just created. And this sphere, because this program that I'm using is an AutoCAD derived program, the program has inherent to it very scientific measurements like length, surface area, volume, time. It even has gravity and physics. It has realistic lighting where you can measure lights and match them to real world lights. It has wind. It has material properties like reflectivity and refractivity, translucency. Pretty much any characteristic of an object in the real world can be replicated in 3D software. And that's why these animations can be introduced as evidence or can come in and as demonstrative evidence in a lot of settings, because they're based on real principles. So back to a 3D model, right? So I just created this sphere. We can see that it's 77 feet in diameter, and all the way around. It's got 18,000 square feet of surface area and 239,000 cubic feet of volume. So those are the properties of the sphere. It's an enormous sphere. The sphere is actually created of, and all 3D models are created of points and essentially triangles. So if I were to connect all these points real quickly, you would see that this sphere is just a series of triangles, and that's every 3D model. So the next time you go and watch, Spider-Man or the Avengers or some movie that has computer graphics in it, if there's a computer graphic, it's created this way. It's a series of triangles that have been arranged in a particular way to make something look realistic. In this case, it's the sphere, but the sphere, I could manipulate it a little bit. I could move, this vertice and that vertice, this point and that point until it looked like a human face or a car or a gun or a street light. And that's how a 3D model and how a 3D environment is made. And that's the kind of basis of all 3D animation. The next part is textures. So, this just looks like a yellow ball right now, but I can easily, add a material to this. And now it's red. Now it's red. It has some sort of, let's see if I turn on a little bit of light. It has some reflectivity to it, or some kind of shine to it. And this can be extrapolated in numerous ways. So it could be a skin, it could be metal, it could be rubber, it could be wood, it could be anything. So you can kind of start understanding how these things, when you start kind of manipulating them and building them, and when you have a good artist that can do it realistically, and you can match a solid data source, it can be very realistic. Next thing here, I'm going to look at my notes real quick, make sure I'm staying on track. Lighting. So lighting is another really key part of 3D animation. So I could throw a simple light in here and illuminate this from a certain angle, and it would cast a shadow over here. I could put a daylight in there and say that it's 3:26 in Baltimore, Maryland, and the light would match the latitude and longitude of the real world. It would put the sun at the correct position in the sky. I could add weather. I could add fog. I could add dust and debris in the air like there exists in California, and that can all be scientifically driven. Next thing here is animation. So actually, making something move. This thing is static right now. I can simply just add a keyframe, move forward in time and drag this thing over here. And now it has a path. It moves in space and time from one place to another. This is a really important concept because, animations move. They have movement to them. This could easily be a hand opening up, or a neck snapping back, or a brain moving in a skull, animated in this very same way, albeit with, a little more TLC and time. Cameras are really important. Everything's really important. I keep saying that, but cameras are essential. We're going to talk more about cameras a little bit later. But in 3D programs, everything is seen through a camera. And a camera, so I just created this camera right here. A camera in the 3D software has physical properties the same as a camera in real life. So I just created a 35mm camera. If there's any photographers out there, or even not, it's a pretty standard camera. 35mm also happens to be a very good representation of what the human eye can see when you start talking about driver's view or witness views. So that's a really important kind of thing to understand. I put a cylinder in the way here, and now if I look through this camera, I can't see that ball that I had created before because it has a cylinder in the way. So you can use cameras to validate or invalidate witness perspectives, or maybe to show a line of sight obstruction. If there's a tree in the way of something or some bushes the city forgot to trim, and you have a case involving what could or not have been seen by your plaintiff, using 3D cameras to represent what they saw is really important, and it's all data driven. There's white papers to back up these principles. Last on here is, or second to last, is rendering. I won't talk about rendering too much. Basically, rendering is making things look pretty. So it's kind of a time-intensive process of the computer just sitting there calculating lighting, calculating how a light bounces off a brick wall onto a reflective car, and now you have a really realistic reflection on this car, and so rendering makes things look real. The last thing I have on here is laser scans or other input data, and I can bring really any data source into my 3D animation software, whether it's a radiology, an X-ray from a radiology report, or a laser scan, or total station data, or a video. I can bring that video directly into my software and begin to match it. And we'll go over that, a little bit later, because that's actually a really important thing. And I said important again, but it is. It's all important. All right, cool. So I just jumped into the animation software. Here's a little more kind of robust version of what I just showed you. This is actually a 3D laser scan right here. This is in somewhere near Los Angeles. And a laser scan, again, it's hundreds of millions of data points that are accurate to the millimeter. So we go out to the site, we take this laser scan, and then we start to add our 3D models on top of it. And the 3D models need to be added on top of it because the laser scan itself is kind of, it's kind of ethereal. You can see through it. It doesn't have accurate material properties. It's not hard, it's vaporous. So we add our 3D models, which actually are hard surface, and then we can add materials and lighting to the 3D models. Now we go from that laser scan, to this very realistic scene, and I can look out, from this driver's view and say, hey, in fact, we could see that motorcycle. Here's all the evidence to support it. Everything is data driven here, right? But it still looks very realistic, and it's a compelling exhibit. All right, cool. So what makes an animation look good? When do you want that, and when don't you? So it seems like a simple question, but it's actually not. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of what doesn't look good. And I pulled these aren't animations that I created. And I pulled these from some different animation companies, and, really not, I didn't do it to kind of diss on them, because these companies actually do some really good work. But every now and then someone creates something that's not great. And, I've kind of hid the name of it, so you can't really tell, what company it is. But let's talk about what doesn't look good. The number one thing that you see that won't look good in animations is the way that human beings move. This human being looks pretty realistic. It's actually a pretty good 3D model of a human being. But as human beings ourselves, the number one thing that we know, kind of what moves properly, like if we were to say, hey, that tree looks like it's moving kind of funny, you would never say that. But if you see a human being that's moving in a weird manner, like someone that took too much of something at Coachella, it's very obvious that there's something wrong with them, right? So this type of animation like this, where someone looks like they're not moving properly, immediately as a viewer, you start to think that's not real. There's something wrong, that's not accurate. And that's a really bad position to kind of be in, to have your animation be in, right? Because the last thing you want is a jury or a mediator or somebody else to cast doubt on the validity of your animation. This girl might be running at an accurate speed, and the bicycle might be traveling at an accurate speed, but it doesn't look real. So your brain's already casting doubt on that. And it's the easiest thing to notice with the way that human beings move. Now, here's one of ours. And I don't think this is perfect. I think there's a lot of problems with this way that this girl's moving, but it's a lot kind of more realistic in the way that she moves and kind of gets hit. The running animation is more of an accurate kind of way you would see someone jogging across the street. The way that she gets hit by the vehicle, it looks like it's happening in a world that actually has Newtonian physics, where things fall at certain rates and they get moved and slide across the ground at certain rates. So it's important to understand how people move. Another example, this is another competitor's. Again, these guys do really good work too. I don't think this one's great, and they could probably find issues with some of mine as well. But you'll start to see if something really moves and it doesn't look like it's obeying physics. I don't know how well you guys can see this through Zoom. It's not stuttering on my end. It's just the animation has a weird kind of unrealistic quality about it, right? It's something is not right, and it's, as a viewer, you start to cast doubt as to whether this accident actually happened this way. Granted, this person probably did merge over in their budget, rent a truck, but there's no way a vehicle in the real world can move that way. And if I'm looking at that, I'm going to start thinking something's wrong, and they're trying to cheat what I'm seeing in some way. Same kind of case right here, right? This is one that we created that has pretty accurate physics, at least I would say so. And you can tell immediately that looks real. That looks like, okay, that's how it happened. I believe that. I believe that's what happens, right? And that's important. So I'm going to stay here for a second. So we talk about what makes something look good is when it needs to look real, it does, right? If something doesn't need to look real, you don't have to make it look real with an animation. But if it needs to look real, if you're trying to say the vehicle's moved this way, the vehicle should move the way the vehicles move. And if this human being moved this way, the human being should move a way that a human being can actually move. Otherwise, there's doubt. Cool. So what makes an effective exhibit? So I say what makes an effective exhibit is when you present data in the best way possible to explain a narrative. So if I go back to this case, the case involves a truck that made an unsafe merge, and there was a chain reaction between two other vehicles that hit a motorcyclist, right? So I just spoke that out. There's a police report that dictates that. There's probably an accident reconstructionist that say that the delta V was this, they were traveling at this speeds. There's, a surgeon that can say this guy broke X and Y body parts and I had to do this surgery on him. But, we presented it in a way, in the best possible way to explain the narrative of what happened to that guy. So that's what we consider making an effective exhibit. Cool. So I'm going to circle back a little bit and talk about realism, right? So a second ago, I talked about, when does something need to look real, and when is it okay if it doesn't? Which is, really tied in with effective exhibits. So this is an exhibit that we created where part of it doesn't look real, and it's on purpose, right? If it doesn't need to look real, it doesn't have to. And this is one of those cases. So this case involves, we were working for the city of Chicago. Sorry, this is a defense case. I apologize. There was a shooting. There's a police involved shooting. There's a lot of officers. There's like 15 or 17 officers out here. And these guys were robbing an electronics store, and they kind of do a, Wild West out this warehouse door. And the city of Chicago retained us to show some officer perspectives because they wanted to see what the officers saw and why they fired so many shots. There was 40 something shots fired at this vehicle. So what we did is, we recreated that surveillance video, and we did it. And I'm going to show you kind of how we did it in a minute here. But one of the important things is back in the surveillance video, we can see all these officers up here, and we actually analyzed where every single one of these officers was. However, we don't know which officer they are. I can't say that this is Officer Smith and this is Officer, Douglas. I know there's an officer standing there, but there's not enough resolution in the video to make out which officer is which, and there's not enough good testimony to say who is who. So we concede to the fact that we can't do that. We say, it's a limitation of our animation to be able to say where these officers are. All I can tell you is there is an officer standing at this point. So that's one example of, kind of when you can show something in a not realistic manner, but still produce a very effective exhibit. The effectiveness of this exhibit is showing the perspective of how close this vehicle was, how it actually struck a couple of these officers, and that's why, these officers fearing for their lives, fired shots, right? This is from the from the plaintiff's perspective as well. And this is all created from that one video. Let me backtrack a little bit. One other part of this that's not realistic that I want to share, let's see, pause. Okay, and this is, I was getting hammered on this when I was testifying in Chicago on this case, is we did not depict any of the bullet holes in this car as these cops were firing rounds. And, I conceded to the fact that, yes, it's not realistic and that we didn't show which bullet was hitting which part of the car when, because there's no possible way to know that. The video footage did not have enough data to show which part of the car was getting hit when. Really, this demonstrative exhibit was created to demonstrate how close this vehicle was to the officers. The court accepted that as a reason for producing this. They thought it was valid, it was probative, and an accurate way of depicting what these officers saw and why they did what they did. So not realistic, but effective as an exhibit. And we got a defense result in that case. I don't know why I shared that to a bunch of plaintiff attorneys. Again, I apologize. Moving forward, this is another type of exhibit that's not realistic, but is effective, right? So this is a case we did for the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office. And basically this guy that has this red arrow up here, there's a lot of video. It's about 15 minutes of video. And this guy essentially beats two homeless people up, one of them to death and one very close, just in kind of a moment of rage. Very sad case, but also complicated kind of what's happening. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people that are going to start walking through the top of this frame. And it's really just the very top of a video frame in a very dark area. So we analyzed it. We have a really good understanding of where any given party is at any given point in time. And I can kind of scroll through this a little bit. There's parts where there's more people and there's parts where there's less. But then we just mapped what was happening here onto a top-down image that we just created from Google. So this is a Google satellite image, and we mapped the location so you can get a better understanding, a better narrative of the fact that the defendant, in this case, happened to be around, the person that was killed in the location of where the body was found at the same time. And the person that was killed never left that location. Even though you couldn't see them on the video, this top-down map really made it clear that they're in fact, are there. And it was a very useful piece of evidence in being able to convict this guy. And he was convicted and serving a long time in jail. So, thank God for that. Here's another type of effective exhibit, right? And this is a very, a very effective exhibit. You know what? I just realized that I didn't give you pricing for a lot of these last ones, and I really want to do that. I always make a promise to do that. I can't speak to my competitors' animations, but to ours, this animation, I think was around, between $15,000 and $20,000. There's a lot of different viewpoints besides that one. This one was probably about the same. A few more vehicles, so probably closer to like a $20,000 mark for creating this type of very realistic accident reconstruction animation. We'll go through this animation. So this is a very robust animation, where you had to animate, 17 people or so in a vehicle. That Chicago one, I think, was closer to $30,000. This animation, which is very effective, I think we did for just a few thousand. It was like $3,000 or $4,000 to create this really effective top-down view of what happens. This next one I'm going to show is a slip and fall case. I think I created this for about $2,000 or maybe $2,500, and I'll jump right back into this one. And I'm trying to stay on top. I'm going to keep looking down. I'm not taking text messages. I'm making sure I'm staying on time here. So this case involved it was a Ralph's case, a plaintiff case against Ralph's. This employee kind of walks through, spills her drink a bunch, and then kind of nonchalantly realizes that she's actually walking with her drink upside down. And then kind of walks back, slowly grabs some paper towels, and then our girl comes through and slips. Now the defense claims that all these other people are walking through, no one slips. Our girl, who's going to slip right here, she walks into the store, doesn't buy anything, and walks right back out. So the defense is saying, hey, no one's going to believe that this girl actually got hurt. She just kind of made this thing up. you know, the floor wasn't really that slippery. So here's the exhibit that we created. And this is a simple, we're talking about effective exhibits. So this is really, we're talking about the best way to tell a story here. And the story is the fact that there was an actual spill on the ground, even though you can't really see anything. But when you start to analyze this video a little bit closer, and I really take a look at this, I see that there's these pixels on the ground that weren't there before. So I isolate those little parts of the frame, I rewind before our employee walks through, and I show you know, what those parts of the floor looked like before she walked through. And you can see there's a clear difference. There actually is water on the floor, soda, or whatever it was from her drink. The next part, kind of dispelling the next part of the defense's argument, was that, you know, everybody else was walking through this area. Well, we highlighted those same areas, and you can see that no one steps on them. They step near them and around them. That guy didn't step on him. The employee doesn't step on him on the way back. And then there's going to be one more guy that comes through. He steps right in front of the first one, and then he steps right on the side of the second one, which is where our girl steps right in the middle of and takes her fall. So an effective exhibit, you know, I think it was, $2,000, $2,500 to create that exhibit, and got a really good settlement out of that case by showing that, hey, this is obvious that this girl did this. Cool. All right, so let's jump right into video. I'm gonna take a sip of water real quick. So many cases are caught on video these days, and you know, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse that there's so many things caught on video, because a lot of cases have videos, and it's like, okay, I have this car accident caught on video, I'm golden. Well, not necessarily, because there's a lot of problems, right? There's low quality, there's poor lighting. A lot of times the action is either far from the camera, or it's like up in the corner of the camera and you can't really make it out, or there's blur because someone took a video on a cell phone and you can't really see what's happening. Or there's incorrect timing. A lot of times there's surveillance cameras that will only pick up when something in the foreground is moving. So you have missing pieces of data in the background. Incorrect aspect ratio that makes, you know, distances look skewed. Perspective issues. I have nearly every police body cam video, and it's really every wide angle video camera really distorts space. You know, it's kind of like when you look in the side view mirror of your car, it says objects in mirror are closer than they appear. Well, objects in cameras, especially wide angle cameras, are closer than they appear. So it might look like your two parties are, 50 feet away from each other, when in actuality they're 10 feet away from each other. Missing action, we kind of hinted on, sometimes people will walk behind a bush or something and you miss an important element. Or a lot of times there's shaky video, like cell phone video, or a video of video. There's so many times that a security guard will take a video of something bad that happened on their security monitor and then delete the video. It happens like literally every week. I see that video. And there's ways to fix all of these problems. I'm not going to go into that. I have a whole presentation on but dealing with and working with poor video. I just want to say that it's possible to address all of these issues and still produce a really strong exhibit from this data. Here's one particular camera case, and I think this is a really good fit. Again, it's a defense case. I apologize. I do this presentation for a lot of different people, but it's going to really hammer home some good elements. So this case involves two planes that they have crossing runways, and the pilots didn't communicate properly before takeoff. And one of the pilots avoids the other and unfortunately loses control of his plane. So I was retained by a couple defendants to kind of work with this video, which isn't necessarily a great video. This action's taking place far away. At surface value, it's just, hey, these planes crashed because, someone didn't communicate and this guy lost control of his plane. So the defendants, the plaintiff's, argument was this guy lost control of his plane because he didn't know what he was doing. So this is what we did. First, we take this kind of more blue looking video right here is the surveillance footage. And then behind it, the more gray looking video is our 3D animation. And what we do is we match that surveillance camera to our 3D model, which we had talked about earlier. So you all know what 3D models are now, which is great. And then we start animating these vehicles, these planes, as they come into view. And frame by frame, we match them up in our 3D environment to the source video. So we know that you know, we know the environment's accurate, we know the video's accurate, and we've kind of married the two. And if we can match the positions of our 3D model to the positions of the planes in the video, you know that we have a very good match. This is scientifically proven that this method is accurate. And we use this all of the time on so many cases. So what's cool about this? It's not really cool until you realize that once you have a good 3D recreation, you can show it from any perspective. So maybe this casts a little more light on what happened. But really, this is the video that casts a lot of light on what happened. This is the defendants, or I mean, his family were really the defendants. But this is the pilot of the plane that crashed, his point of view. So he's taking off like normal, like he would on any other day. And then right there, another plane is out of his periphery, coming from right to left across his field of view. If I start counting, when I play this again, let's do this again. So I'm going to start counting as soon as I see that plane come into view, right? 1,000, 2, 1,000. Okay, so our pilot right here has started an evasive maneuver about 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds into seeing an object that shouldn't be there coming from his right. So like any human being, when you see something coming from your right, he's going to veer left. And about 1.5 seconds is a proper perception reaction time. And unfortunately, he loses control of the vehicle, or the plane in this case, just by nature of the dynamics of where the planes were at that point in time. So we got a defense verdict in, a $30 million demand case. And this was a really key video in having the jury understand this guy couldn't have done anything else besides what he did. Trust me, these videos can be used really well in plaintiff cases also, especially ones involving video. Here's another one. This is a more, a little bit of a hot topic right now. This is the Rayshard Brooks shooting down in Atlanta that happened. I'm going to turn the sound off here. Rayshard Brooks shooting that happened recently. So I did analysis on this, and this took me about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to do this analysis. So I took the video that was just available from, CNN or whatever news source, and first, we have to undistort the video. So I'm not going to go into details about that. If you're more curious about videos, we have another presentation we can do for you. Let's do this again. So we undistort it, and then we do a 3D recreation. Now, this is a very basic 3D recreation, right? So I'm just using a Google Earth satellite image, but I know all the vehicles are in the right place, kind of based on how they were in the source video. And now that I have a 3D recreation, and I know that Rayshard Brooks and the officer that shot him are, in the places they actually were in the video, I can start showing some different perspectives. I can show a witness perspective. I don't know if there actually was a witness that says anything right here, but if there is, I can validate the fact that what she saw. If there's something else in the vehicle, I could put something in the vehicle and show that it might have obstructed her view. And I can go in, I could take measurements. I can say that they're 10.5 feet apart at this point in time. I can go in and I can show this officer's perspective. So this is 1.5 seconds before he fires his service weapon. This is what he's seeing. No, I'm not an attorney. I'm not ever going to be a juror on this case because I live 3,000 miles away. But, that's an effective point of view. That tells a certain story. And this can be done, on any case. This, working with video, recreating it using these methods. I'm kind of getting a little limited on time here, and I always keep people the correct amount of time. So I'm going to kind of breeze through this. I just want to show you, this is a study I did for the American Academy of Forensic Sciences earlier this year, and just kind of showing we can do the same thing with police body cameras, right? So this is a body camera that we did. We match it. We can show how far people are apart from each other. We can go in and we can take measurements of objects, which will happen in a second here. I try and time my water drinking properly, but sometimes I get a little dead radio silence, which isn't good, but do my best here. And then I'll show you, this is the body cam video that's on my chest. I'm actually the one that's running through these things. And this is our 3D recreation. So I'm going to kind of swipe, back and forth, kind of wipe between them so you can see how accurate the recreation is to the police body camera. So we can recreate these things with extremely high fidelity and accuracy, scientifically proven. and very effective. Once you do this, you can show it from any perspective, right? Cool. All right, let's talk about admissibility, as we got about 7 minutes here before I start taking questions. If you have any questions too, type them into the little Q&A function or the chat function, and I'll get to those. Or you can always email Tony Auzick or myself if you have any questions after this. So demonstrative versus real evidence. We talked about this a little bit throughout the presentation here. Just like any other piece of evidence, animations can kind of fall into either of these categories. If we're doing an analysis of a camera and saying, hey, this camera was at this point, we know this camera was here at this point in time, and these objects are here and here at this point in time. Here's the science to back it up. That's real evidence. That's a real way of analyzing something. And then we can say, based on that, we know that if we're looking from this perspective, this person had the opportunity to see this. And that's evidence. That's solid evidence. Opposed to demonstrative evidence, which is like maybe that earlier police shooting that I showed, that was entirely based on testimony, right? So we can create animations that are entirely based on testimony. We need to be a little bit careful about that. I know in California, we have one case we're working on right now, another officer-involved shooting that involves 22 depositions. And, case law in California allows us to kind of look at those different depositions and say, hey, 19 out of 22 people said it happened this way, so we're depicting it this way. We're working on a case in Wisconsin right now, another officer-involved shooting. And, Wisconsin has a particular law about, went through appeals court, and they have a law about saying that if you're creating a piece of demonstrative evidence, it's actually an animation in the appeals case, that you can't Frankenstein different testimony together. It needs to be an illustration of one person's testimony. I don't really know what the laws are in DC. I'd love to talk to any of you if you have clarity about that. But it's something to be aware of, kind of how these things are put together. We don't want to run into any situations like that. Luckily, it's really easy to find case law about animations, and really every municipality, every state that we've worked in, we haven't ever really run into any problems, finding case law that allows us to do what we do. Legal challenges, in California especially, hearsay is a big one. We had a big case called Sanchez come down a couple years ago, and I'm kind of getting a little short on time here. So basically, Sanchez stated that an expert cannot rely on hearsay to produce their exhibits. That's a really rudimentary way of kind of putting the case law. But it's something to kind of keep in mind, and I use it on all of our cases now. If I'm animating something, it needs to be, if it's a witness perspective, if a witness is saying, hey, this is how it happened, that witness better be a produced witness, a witness that's on a list that's going to either be testifying or deposed or whatever. If I'm using a laser scan data, I need to make sure that whoever created that laser scan, whoever took that laser scan, is a witness that's listed that can testify to the fact that they created the laser scan properly. Otherwise, we can get into some hearsay issues about, well, I received this laser scan and I don't know if it's accurate, and now the whole animation's out. And we definitely don't want to get into that situation. Underlying expert data. This should be kind of clear at this point. Really what we do as 3D animators is we visualize data. So, I laugh at it all the time, and I think like opposing counsel gets very annoyed when I'm getting deposed. I say the expert told me to like 100 times during a deposition. They're like, okay, why did you have this vehicle? Why did you animate this vehicle traveling 35 miles an hour? Because the expert told me to. Why is it why is it bouncing off this vehicle and ending up here? Because the expert told me to. Why are you having this bone break here? And why are you putting this instrument, in it here? Because the surgeon told me to. I have no opinions. As an animator, as a testifying animator, I have no opinions about anything I create. All I'm doing is visualizing data. And it's a very important thing if I'm doing anything besides visualizing data, that's an issue. That's an issue that hopefully the other side, won't catch, but I always assume they will, since we don't do that. Judicial rulings, look, there's always going to be times where a judge is just not going to let an animation in. It just happens. A couple of the cases that, we have that 99% admissibility rate. A couple of the cases, the judge literally has told us they love the animation and he's not going to let it in. Sometimes that happens on admitted liability cases, where we still show a collision to really demonstrate the mechanism of injury and the pain and suffering that someone went through. And sometimes the judge nixes it. You know, it's like happened a couple times, but I make clients aware of that. And I hope it doesn't happen to any of you ever. Lighting is an issue. You know, nighttime lighting, if there's ever a case involving, hey, I needed to animate whether this person can see this person or not at night, it's possible, and it can be done very scientifically. It's very difficult. It takes a long time to produce, and it's very expensive. I'm going to kind of leave it at that, except to say that for every nighttime case that we've worked on where lighting has been some sort of issue, there's a way around it. There's a way around depicting the lighting accurately, because we're trying to show some other point, right? We're trying to say, it doesn't really matter what the lighting is like, because this person traveling this direction to this time, you know, this accident is going to happen anyways, or something to that effect. So if you have a nighttime case, we can get very creative with how we depict it without matching lighting. But if someone says, hey, I can accurately mimic nighttime lighting in your case and show you what someone can see, and they're charging you less than $100,000, I would be very suspect about the accuracy of what they're doing. And I'm not joking about that $100,000 number. It's very tough to do it. Fair and accurate, probative, not confusing. You know, if animations are falling within, you know, those, you know, 4 words or whatever, 6 words, we're solid. You know, you're going to have good results outside of the kind of rare judicial ruling. I like to hammer this home. Better to not depict something than to have an animator make a decision. I'm an artist by trade. I don't want to make decisions. I don't want to have any opinions about what happens in your case. I can do a fantastic job depicting any sort of data that you have, and telling a really good story, but I'm not going to make a decision about how a vehicle moved, how a person, how a bone suffered a certain amount of force and broke, etc. Creating animations in pieces. I realize it's 1 o'clock now. I'm going to go lightning fast through the rest of this. It's just one more slide, I believe. So if you have a case involving that has multiple pieces, so, you know, a vehicle was traveling and they did X, and then Y happened and they crashed, and then Z happened, and then here's how my person was hurt. Creating those in separate kind of animations can potentially save you when it comes to trial, and a judge says, well, hey, you have a piece of data for X that's not good, and so we're not going to let X in. So we'll show the collision and we'll show, you know, what happened to your client, but we're not going to show what happened before because the witness, you know, you can imagine. So doing things in pieces is great for admissibility. Using stills instead of videos, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but just know that you can show, you know, a still image of, you know, certain key points of animation and not interpolate between those key points. And that can be really useful in avoiding, you know, any doubt about what the interpolation might entail. Quickly about, I lied, there's 2 slides left. So mediation versus trial exhibits. Let's go through this quick. Mediation, much lower cost. We can create the animations before you have any expert testimony. So not only do you save on the cost of the animation, but you save on potentially not needing to use an expert, because we can create things so accurately without that expert weighing in. The animations can be repurposed for trial. So if you do end up getting like an accident reconstructionist or a medical expert, they can look at our animation and say, hey, fix X and Y, and then we do that, then you're good for trial. And we can really tell the story of your client in the most compelling way possible, because we're not really, it's kind of no holds barred, right? We're not hindered by any of or many of the rules of trial where we have to be so watertight about our data. We're just really showing the story. Final thoughts on pricing, because this is a big thing. You know, how to keep costs low, really understand what you want to animate, what the key points are. You don't necessarily need to animate your entire case. You know, there might be one key incident that showing that is going to really have the jury understand something. Flat pricing versus hourly. Our company does flat pricing. So we say, hey, it's going to cost $15,000. It's going to cost that. A lot of animators are hourly. They say $150 an hour. Then you have a bill for 500 hours and you're wondering what happened. Understand the scope of the contract, right? Especially around change orders. When I meet a lot of attorneys at trade shows, even though trade shows like don't exist anymore, hopefully they will in the near to future. The biggest complaint that I get is, hey, this company said they were going to charge me 10 grand for an animation. They charged me 10, and they came back and I said, hey, this part's wrong. You got to change this. They said, okay, it's going to be another 8 grand to fix that. Well, I'm already in the hole for 10, so I have to do it. That happens all the time. My company doesn't charge for change orders. As long as it's within the scope of our original, project agreement, we're good. Also understand testifying fees. I've seen animators literally charge a higher hourly rate than brain surgeons to testify in trial. I'm not even kidding. It's kind of disgusting. So make sure that you understand, what if you need to have your animator testify, what the fee is going to be. People don't think about that until trial. Also, dedicated animators versus add-on service. Work with an animation company that does animations. There's a decent amount of them. An accident reconstructionist that says they can do an animation, it's like hiring an animator to do an accident reconstruction. It's just not a good idea. Cool. All right. I think we're pretty solid there. And I really appreciate that. I'm not going to be able to talk the rest of the day, but it's always fun to run through this. And I hope you guys got something out of this. I'm going to look at questions. Let's see if I can pop out of here and stop sharing my screen. And I'm not completely sweaty, even though it's about 95 degrees in my office. Let's see. Do we have any questions? We don't have any questions. Okay, no worries.
Yeah, Brady, I was just going to say
Sure.
that I thought it was just fascinating, really. And as a visual person, boy, what a difference it makes to me. I have a husband who is a trial lawyer, so he tells me about his cases all the time. But just watching them come to life is night and day. And what was interesting also is it looks like you have different price points depending on budget. Like I saw all the different levels, let's say, of what you can do. So that's good for our members to know that it doesn't have to be the top end to still be effective. But very,
Absolutely.
very interested. I loved it.
All right, fantastic.
All right, so friends, I will have this as a video, which I will be posting to the entire listserv if anybody missed any part of this. And Brady and Tony, thank you so much for your support of our association and for doing this webinar today.
Excellent. Thanks, Mary. Really appreciate being here. And, I hope everybody stays safe and look forward to getting in front of some juries soon.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
Be
Bye.
well.